Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF Everything in That Shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF Everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And Dan
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
We did it. And we're here today to talk about Blade.
That's right.
Yeah. Hopefully this goes better than Spawn. All right.
I think it's going to go very, very well because it's just I've been waiting for a very long time to review this movie, and it having rewatched it, I forgot a lot about this movie and a lot of the scenes,
Yeah, you
or
were
at
saying
least
that yesterday.
or what I think happens is I confuse Blade with Blade 2 a lot.
That was my initial.
Yeah.
That was my initial thing too. But I had to rewatch this last year sometime for a different podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the That Shelf podcast network, so I don't have to say their name. But it kind of put some stuff together for me, just so I could be like, oh, this is the movie. But this time I still got more out of it watching it again, especially in light of the conversation we had last episode with Spawn and the overall conversation about, when people were like, no, but Blade and Spawn were the first black superheroes. Like, just I can see them inching closer to Blade being black is actually like a talking point in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I still maintain that it does not really change anything for him. But this time around, I did see that there is room for you to put that layer over this movie. But we'll get into that because I don't think that was specifically black, but more a mixed race conversation.
It's definitely mixed race conversations, but also I think a lot of topics that specifically have been running alongside the black community, like and all that kind of stuff, and the stuff the black communities in general internationally, right? Like them trying to use the vampire thing together in some sort of like STI infection kind of thing, and as a kind of a representation of the AIDS pandemic in Africa kind of stuff, is kind of some of the things I kind of picked away from this too, really, really looking at this from a race standpoint, because you're right, having remembered this movie, or not remembered it very, very well, it was always one of those movies where his race was not actually a central point or a theme within it, or so I thought. Now watching it again with that perspective, it's much more under the radar for me, especially. Very interested to watch this movie.
So, couple of things. First of all, apparently when David Goyer pitched this movie, the only people that the studio would do it, New Line, to name them, the only people they were going to do it with, if they were going to do it, were Wesley Snipes, Denzel Washington, and Lawrence Fishburne. But David Goyer only ever wanted Wesley Snipes, which I'm sure by the time he was directing the third movie, he was like, what the fuck? But that's interesting to know that he always wanted Wesley. And I think Wesley's on that list because he was already talking to them about doing Black Panther.
Right. You did say that Snipes wanted to do Black Panther, but they were like, well, we don't want to do Black Panther right now, but we're doing Blade, so he kind of took Blade.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Black Panther happened when it did.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Because, in the sense of, and of course, we're not going to talk too much about Black Panther because we've done that in its own episode, but we have to draw points of comparison. Is that to mean to you that you don't think that the world was ready for the message that Black Panther had yet?
No, I think the corporations weren't ready to have that message out.
Gotcha. They weren't ready to support that message.
No.
What you're saying.
I don't think there's some kind of message in Black Panther that hurts the corporation. I think they're just like, no, we don't. It's what they talked about in Spawn. Like, We just don't want it to be a black movie.
Right.
We need to make money, so we don't want to. And as I said again last episode, we want it to be the right kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more what I mean, is that it would have felt toothless compared to what we got in 2018.
Right.
Yes, 2018. Anyway, another almost casting is Jet Li as Deacon Frost. That was very interesting to me.
That was super interesting.
I don't think that would have worked.
I don't think it would have worked as well.
Part of what I like about Deacon Frost, and I do like Deacon Frost in this movie, is it's an actor that's not having to worry about translating. He's just using his original like mother tongue.
Yes.
So if Deacon Frost was speaking, I don't know what Jet Li speaks. Does he speak Mandarin or Cantonese?
He speaks Mandarin.
He does speak Cantonese. I feel like he speaks more Cantonese and stuff I've seen, but maybe
no, because the reason why is because the Cantonese film scene is traditionally had more money in it than
that's why I've seen him do more Cantonese. Okay.
Yeah, but recently there's been a bigger shift towards Mandarin because there's more marketing and money in the Mandarin markets than there's in the Cantonese markets, believe it or not.
I mean,
because that's the funny thing about like Chinese culture is like the representation is largely Cantonese in media, but the population is largely Mandarin speaking.
And I don't think.
To me,
like
Jet Li
when he's menacing. I feel
he's
like
not a menacing person. He's
not.
Like,
he's good at being silent.
Yes,
he's good. And like I'm saying, even if he was speaking to be fair, I've seen limited stuff of him being able to speak at least a language he's more comfortable with than English. Mm-hmm. And even then, I'm kind of like, I get what your thing is, and I don't think it's what Stephen Dorff did in this movie.
I think the only reason
they probably wanted two martial artists to go.
That's entirely why. Because that to me is the biggest thing about this movie compared to Spawn was like the action sequence, the fighting, and everything like that. This was exactly how I remembered it. It was exactly how it was. Versus Spawn was like, wait, I remembered it being a lot better in terms of the action sequences and the fight scenes. Versus this was on par with what I remembered it being. Mm-hmm. So that was why I considered it, but also the reason of, you know how the Asian gangsters were used in this movie, kind of being like, okay, well, actually now there's a reason to use the Asian gangsters in that kind of thing. That would actually make sense to me. But then it'd be interesting to see how they would have written the movie to have like the Asian gangster side of things interpreting vampirism, because vampirism is a big part of Chinese literature. Or like,
I still maintain I don't know how committed they were to dealing with certain people's ethnicities. I think as much as I want to meet the movie more than halfway and be like, oh, okay, like as a mixed race person, you aren't accepted completely in the Black community. You're definitely not visibly completely accepted by white community.
Yes.
So everyone hates you. Mm-hmm. Both communities kind of look at you as having a superpower, and you're kind of is where I'll be like, okay, because at one point Deacon Frost is like, oh, you're like the best of both worlds, you've got this superpower, and he's like, well, maybe I don't look at it that way. And as I said in the Spawn episode, they do use two racial things for Blade in this. They call him Bright Eyes or Bright Boy. I can't remember which one. I keep confusing it with Django, but they use that. That's what Donald Logue calls him.
Right.
And then I don't remember Donald Logue's character name, but and then Deacon calls him an Uncle Tom, which is strictly calling it out there. But the only thing I feel like takes away from that is like specifically his interaction with cops, like the fact that he can beat a cop in like broad daylight, and that's like it's not even played like, oh my goodness, because he has the power to do that. It's just like, no, he's the superhero, like he's the hero of the movie. So this is just
I definitely wanted to talk about that one scene, because that one scene I just thought that was like, wait, what?
Or when they shoot him, and he's just like, motherfucker, are you crazy? And it's like, I mean, again, it's just because of the time it was made, but those are two things that stand out to me, that of like, if we were going to like dig into this,
that's where I see
those scenes would have been given a little bit more meaning. Than just like,
to me, that's where this is specifically a white lens directing this, because that would never have, those two scenes never would have been the case if it were, for example, at Jordan Peele doing anything like this, right? Because it was just like, no, that's
or
not
Ryan
realistic. That would just
Coogler,
never
or
happen. Or
yeah,
Coogler would be, I was looking for Coogler or whatever, but it's just like those scenes would never play out, and I'm like, that those scenes
or
to me were like, this
they
is
would
very
be
white.
something that you like that makes you think more than we're thinking about it because we're looking for it, but I think
Correct. That's
we're
also
kind
true.
of just like, I don't see that the director had any intention other than,
Yes.
oh, here's a funny line of the motherfucker, are you crazy?
Yep.
Like, I don't know what Wesley Snipes' intentions are. Maybe he is internally like, oh, this is like, of course they want to shoot the brother in the scene or whatever, but it's not like a thing. It's kind of like, as I said, you're meeting the movie more than halfway.
Yes.
You are going to see that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
so,
I guess
that's the
I
thing,
like this
like,
as an action movie. It's not
yes.
like it doesn't really go deeper than that for me.
No, it doesn't. Aside from like vampire lore stuff, like, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
but that's
even then,
entirely written, fictionalized within its own thing. But it's not like that is its own. What we're here for, right? We're here for that, and whether or not they can layer elements of reality on top of it, and that's where there's inconsistencies. Where there's like doing the mixed race thing, definitely is one of those things to address it, and I think that vehicle of delivery through that monologue was very, very interesting. But then to be like, yeah, we're gonna beat up a cop in the middle of the daylight on the street is crazy. Like, versus, I'm sure anyone else that would have had a better perspective on this. Even Tarantino, I think, might have been like, I'm gonna put this character. No, we're gonna do it in an alleyway. It's gonna be dark or something like that.
Or it would have been like it would have been like he gets shot up and something bad happens. Obviously, he doesn't die, but like something in the movie makes it clear that like this moment where he's beating up this cop is like a retribution moment for earlier when the cop stopped. And yes, that character is just a familiar, like they say in the movie. He's just like, obviously Blade isn't looking at him like a cop at that point. He's looking at him like, but the fact that it is in broad daylight in the middle of the street and everyone's just kind of like, oh, whatever. Is what for me makes it feel like, oh, like they didn't care about this. This is just to keep the story going. They're not actually looking at what this could mean. Yeah,
that's where it's just like anyone that just like, here's the first, like, to your point, it's like, here's the first black superhero. It's like, yes, but there's an asterisk, and this is why, because it wouldn't genuinely happen. Versus like, I think another character that gets pulled into this argument a lot is Shaft. Versus, I don't think Shaft is a good representation either, but that's not my place to actually say that. I don't know.
He's not a superhero.
No, he's not a superhero, but like a lead or whatever. But a lot of people actually bring that in, and it's weird.
I specifically mean superhero when I say, like, I know I like that Donald Glover kind of touches on that in his special Weirdo, but like, they're not. It's not the same thing. That would be
it's definitely
like,
not. It's like elevating James Bond to be a superhero status.
Yeah, James Bond or MacGyver. Like, it's like, oh, they're you a black person was Superman. Then what if a black person was MacGyver? It's like, okay, then who? Like, it's two different conversations.
It is two different conversations. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. And you just kind of finished the thought for me. Which is awesome. Yeah. So,
but yeah, Blade. Also, I didn't realize that Whistler was made for the cartoon. I thought that was just a thing.
See, I didn't realize that either. I had no idea.
Yeah, they loved him so much in the '94 Spider-Man cartoon that they're like, oh, that's just a thing now. This is part of the lore. And I'm like,
I don't hate it.
No, I think, as I said, it's the same thing I said about the Crow. Like, I feel like you need that like mentor figure.
Yeah.
And even though it's not, I mean, yes, in this movie the mentor can kind of give you backstory. It's just you do need that person that like knows. And so that for me as an audience member, I can at least be like, even if there is no training montage, which I don't ever necessarily need, I can at least be like, well, yeah, he's got a mentor. So he they've got a system that they've worked out. Like I can just make that inference that like, okay, so then like that's how he knows. And again, we've talked about Carl all we're going to talk about it. That's not what that movie was interested in. But for for my sensibilities, I like having that mentor figure there just so that you can kind of be like, well, there's some, it always gives you an opportunity to like flesh out the character, because we've seen now in 2 movies with the mentor figure, successfully done in Spawn, but in this one, it's the moment where like our entry point Karen is like, oh, like you care about Whistler, and like you can kind of be like, it's so the audience can just be like, oh, there is something this person like looks up to, cares about, would want to keep alive, or like would want to save if something
Right. And that's especially important because the character just Wesley Snipes choosing to play Blade as so cold and emotional in like every single scene and all that kind of stuff. Like he's like, no, he's got this. He really cares about something. He cares about someone. He just needs to be this way because of what he does, or whatever.
And I actually think
with it.
This time watching it, my takeaway is, again, I have no clue what Wesley Snipes is trying to get across.
Yeah.
In my head, I think he's kind of just like a kid. Like he's like there's the way he smiles when he's about to throw his weapon.
Yeah.
Or like when he goes like he like actually does like a fist pump when he like kills some people. I feel like he's more childlike than he's letting on. It's just like he can also do all these things to kill people, and I kind of like that. Interesting. Again, not something they really do much with, and it kind of goes away after a while. But like in those opening moments, like you kind of get the sense that he's like he's like a kid assassin. Like he's like
not to the degree like Deadpool, but like
he's not funny.
Like, he's
not developed. He's
exactly.
He's not mature yet.
I get what you're saying. It's like that part of his innocence or whatever has maintained intact, and that like is an essential part of his humanity. I really do love that part of the writing. Like those small little moments, I would have been like, because when I was a kid, would have been like, yeah, that would have been cool. Like, you know, I would have been smirking like, I got this like boomerang thing and it's Chuck and you're all dead. Like, I got to smirk about that. But now as an adult, I'm just like, maybe he did have like that was part of the thing that kept him at his like his trauma kept him at that kind of part of development.
It's what I also say, like, no matter how dark a movie is, like, or like, I kind of, if we're spending time with a character, if a group of characters, I need to see that someone is enjoying what they're doing.
Yes.
Preferably the main character, and in this case, it is Blade. You can tell he loves what he does.
Yeah.
There is an element of like, I have to do this, but he's like, the moments where he's like smiling and like fist pumping, like he also likes doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's always important for me. Again, I don't think that's not like a rule that I feel like everyone needs, but I think if you really are like unpacking what you like about stuff at the heart of it, like even if it's the bad guy liking what they're doing, that does a lot to help you connect with a movie or a TV show.
I agree. So like in a situation like in a movie like Django, where like you're not having any fun with the lead character, and then like other characters around him are starting to like, oh, he like DiCaprio's character really enjoys what he's doing.
He loves what he's doing.
He loves what he's doing, and it's the energy that it brings. It's not like what he's actually enjoying. We hate what he enjoys, but we love the energy that it's bringing to counteract.
But Dr. King loves what he does as well.
Yes, exactly.
And then
I guess that serious energy is what I'm talking about, and there's less word for that for me.
Yeah, I don't know how to properly word it, but
it's think the energy. I just got used to using that as a catch-all term.
But like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I appreciate that that's sprinkled into this movie. I don't know why it feels like it kind of goes away by the end, but that might just be the stakes, like that.
I think so.
But then at the last scene when he's in Russia, like you can tell he's like back to like that kind of like, maybe I shouldn't use childlike, but there is like a less mature, like kind of like a when he's like comrade or whatever, and you're kind of like he's like
there's a playfulness. There's a playfulness behind it. It's kind of like the way I kind of saw it was he knows it's going to happen. It's leading up to it. All those kind of things. It's kind of like how Dexter would still talk to someone before he kills them. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, you know you're dead. There's no chance of changing this, but I'm still going to entertain you. I'm going to toy with you, kind of like a cat playing before its prey. Right. I think would be a good way of looking at it. It's just playful in a sick, sadistic serial killer vampire kind of way.
The other thing in this movie I find interesting is that like the vampires are also like, yeah, you're Deacon, like you got turned, so like we don't really take you seriously. You're not pure blood. Yeah. And I for some reason it just made me like, I was really happy when he burned like the main vampire and took his fangs. I was like,
Drake and Eddie.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, all right. I mean, you're still the bad guy, but I'm glad you did this. Like,
Yeah.
fuck that
So
guy.
the interesting thing to me about that whole interaction was like, why was Deacon even allowed to speak at that table if they were like, you're not a pure blood and
I
you're
think
never
they
going to
brought
be a
him
pure
in
blood?
to chastise him, and they lost control of what was going on because
Oh, I see.
he was there to be like, just here, stop doing your club stuff, and he kind of
Right.
was like, no, it's a good idea. I'm gonna keep doing it, and then he took over.
I see.
But like, he was only ever there to just hear them say, "Don't do this anymore. You're bringing too much attention to us."
Well, yeah, well, his whole thing was like, why aren't we really ruling the way we want to rule?
Yes.
Why are we hiding in the shadows and everything like that? They're our food, they're our prey. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing? And
Yeah, but
that to me, that frustration of kind of being like on top, because that was genuinely what it was. He wanted to be on top in every sense of the term, right?
Mhm.
So it was like that small dick energy that was just really like kind of being like, I want me. I'm gonna throw a temper tantrum.
Well,
And
because
I think the comedic beats before the third act, I think to me were necessary in kind of also downplaying whether or not that prophecy that he was researching was real. You know what I mean? Because everyone's like, "That's an old wives' tale. That's a
right.
joke. Like that's not a real thing." And then he's like, "No, I did it. Cool. Check this out."
I don't know, because I never really there. I think before this watch, I thought he was way more calm than this. I can tell that there's like a under the surface thing boiling when he's talking to people, but I kind of like that he didn't really throw tantrums until closer to the end.
Yeah.
He's a little more calm than that. That's kind of what I liked about his performance, is that
Yes.
he was like, yes, he's still like, he is essentially banging on the table being like, why not, but he's never like, like he's not yelling his monologues. He's like, he is still calmly saying them, even though there is that undercurrent of like,
Correct.
this guy's about to blow.
Yeah, it's just because like he just blows off his steam in one specific way and doesn't overlap it. It's very consistent in his character, which is kind of like, that's the scariness behind it, right? He's like this ruthlessness, this craziness, and he's just gonna do it. But also amongst an environment where it's like, yeah, we're gonna kill people casually and all that kind of stuff. So to me, watching it through that perspective, I'm like, is it more brutal, or is he just like, doing whatever he does whenever he wants, and that's just where he gets off? Because I mean, like to me, it's always that rave scene. That rave scene in the beginning is like, okay, this is a regular thing. It wasn't specifically for him. Everyone loved that, that kind of thing. Like this is what vampires do, or so what we're believed this group of vampires does. So it's just like, was he actually that whatever, or was he just a good representation of the lack of control that the purebloods were obviously exhibiting? They were like, yeah, you're not even purebloods. I don't know. Like,
I think the idea is, and again, this is what I think. I don't know what the director or the writers would say. For me, that's more of like, there's the people in their ivory tower who feel like this is the way things should go, and then there are the people who are actually like living their lives, doing what they want to be doing. That's kind of, so I didn't know if it was less their lack of control so much as their inability to keep up with the time. Yes, they're out of touch. I think that's what that highlighted to me, is they're out of touch, and someone like Deacon Frost will be able to take power because more people like what he's doing than what they're doing. They're trying to be exclusive and hide, and obviously, like, for the purposes of this though, like, I want to make the distinction of vampires versus people, and vampires, it seems like on the whole, are trying to be like, well, we don't need to be like that. Like, we could go to a party where we can just bring people in and eat them. Like, we don't have to like lurk in the shadows anymore, or like, so I think that's what they're trying to highlight with this dynamic, is that there is the old guard and then there's the new way of doing things, and Deacon Frost is the face of that new way.
Correct. Yeah. And
the other thing I wanted to get into, because I found this very interesting, because this time watching again, I was like, I wonder, because I feel like Wesley Snipes always has kind of like an awkward relationship with his co-stars, and I was like, I wonder what it was like for him and Steven Dorff. But it seems like they're okay now. Like, they did the DVD commentary together, but it does seem like, when Wesley Snipes was trying to pull like the producer card and the lead card, and he was kind of like, "Come on, man, just like let's get through this, because just trust me." And Steven Dorff was like, "No, I need to find like my process or like my angle on the character," and they didn't get along quite that much at the beginning. It says they like Steven Dorff just couldn't trust Wesley Snipes, but it seems like they got there, which is interesting.
Gotcha.
Mostly because there's not a lot of repeat customers in these movies.
Yeah.
Other than Chris Christopherson, who I feel like dies in every one of them.
Yeah, I don't think he stays alive.
No, he definitely dies in the third one, but that's only because the third one was the last movie. But I feel like
he didn't die in the second one, I don't think.
Oh, my memory is that he dies in every one of them.
Yeah. I think it's very clear in the second one. But I mean, we'll find this out in a little bit anyways, because we're reviewing Blade 2. But here it definitely makes him seem like the job is done. And I believe what the Blade. No, we'll talk about that when we get there. But like, I think the people were recognizing that it's like, hey, we kind of got a couple of people upset that we brought him back with little to no regard. And then we're just going to make sure we're making a final decision to keep him alive, I think was what I remember.
I don't remember. Like, does he come back in this movie, or is he just back in the second one?
He's back in the second one, not in this movie.
I don't get it. So they must explain it, because
they do explain it. So from what I remember is he actually used that final bullet because that guy that got shot with the shotgun that was not a vampire, but was the vampire.
A familiar?
That familiar during the day guys or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
I think what happens in Blade 2 again is that he gets up and he uses that gun to shoot him, being like, yeah, I'm not gonna, and then he just and then he's like, with his last breath, he just, and then he just kind of comes back or something like that. I can't remember. But that was, to me, I'm like, is that how I remember happening? I can't.
I guess you're right. We'll find out, because it is a plot point that I'm always like, wait, so he's dead, but I feel like he's in every single movie. Yeah,
that's how I remember it. I can't remember. I can't.
It's whatever.
I don't know. Yeah,
we will find out, or we won't, and it won't matter because these movies are old. Stan Lee had a cameo that they did not do.
Cut. Yeah. What do you remember? What he
was going to be a cop that goes in and finds the aftermath of that club scene.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
I can see why they cut it.
Yeah,
because I feel like he would play it like a joke, and I don't think there's a lot of jokes in this movie.
No, and that's the thing with the Stan Lee cameos. It always ends up having to be comedic. In these movies, and I love that, but it would have definitely set this way too.
I mean, a lot of sad things happened to him, but I get the sense he wanted people to have a good time when he was around.
Yeah. One of the biggest things about this, and when we're looking at the post-production is, and when we talk about the action scene, action in this being significantly better because Wesley Snipes is a martial artist, is that final sword fight scene between Blade and Deacon Frost. It didn't exist in the original cut. Because when they test screened it, they were like, we want more action. And they're like, okay, I guess we'll put in a sword fight scene. Which is why it makes little to no sense. That to me was why Jet Li was considered, because it's okay, that would actually make sense. Audiences wouldn't question it. Him being good with a sword, all that kind of stuff, especially the type of sword that they were using, versus Deacon Frost using that sword and being so good at it, being able to match up with Blade. I'm like, well, why wasn't this ever part of the rest of it? Because he was getting Donald Logue's character Quinn to constantly do stuff for him. So you're thinking Deacon Frost is a guy that's just he's big talk and all this kind of stuff. He's ruthless, but he doesn't actually do stuff himself. That was one of the things that was.
If I were him, I would just get the Donald Logue. I think his name's Quinn. I would just get him to do whatever I didn't want to do.
Exactly. Right.
So that's boss, why it's part of maintaining dominance. If you're just going to go do everything, people will like you more, but you probably are putting yourself out there too much.
Correct. But I never got the sense that it was one of those things where Quinn was actually afraid of him for martial art abilities, which is why that final fight scene felt so out of touch for me.
I would
watching it this
say
time around.
I would say there would have to be some element of him being good at combat. Otherwise, why him out of everyone else as the leader of this new thing?
Right, but at that point, the blood god would arguably be the thing that would take care of that, as opposed to whatever. I don't.
Are you giving an
know what I
argument
mean?
for why he's good at it?
No, like what? So to me, the leader of a gangster or movement or whatever doesn't always have to be the best at fighting, right? That's always the case.
Not
And
by
in
the
this
time he's
movie,
the
it doesn't.
leader, but I would imagine, like, I don't know that you are able to just take the reins just on like, just trust me, I'm good. There would be an element of people being like, no, I've seen what he can do.
Oh, Doug Ford.
Well, that's politics. That's something else.
But you know what I mean? It's just like it happens, and this is one of those situations where, to me, it seemed like he was just so entitled, so privileged that he was one of those people that's like.
But he's not
like,
privileged
when he was alive, right? But like what I'm saying,
that's the whole thing. Is that he looks at Blade as a privileged person.
Yes, he does.
He is someone that got turned.
Yeah,
and so he's not seen, and he can't go out into the day like Blade can, so he doesn't even have that element of it. That's what I'm saying. He's not Doug Ford. That's not the analog. And it's not politics either. This is him. Everything he does is he's taking stuff by brute force. Like that's why he like takes the fangs out of the main guy and burns him to death. Like that wasn't like he didn't have like some cool like loophole where it's like, oh shit, I guess I'm in charge now. It was just like, no, I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna burn you, take your fangs out, and send it back to those people so they know I'm not fucking around. So yeah, I don't see him as like, he's a white guy, so I feel like you mark him with privilege. But like in terms of how he sees himself and how the movie is presenting him, he's not in a privileged place. He's in a place where he's like, oh, like I should be in a place, and it's upsetting to me that this Uncle Tom is higher than me.
This is a thought I'm definitely not finding the right words for. But what I'm definitely saying is his character up until that scene does not strike me as someone that would be good at fighting. I mean, you know what I mean?
Sure, but what I would say is the movie doesn't ever make me feel like he's not good at it either. There's nothing.
I haven't considered that angle either. I was
nothing,
just like,
you just don't see
to
him.
To me, it was just like one of those things where I'm like, why? What? All of a sudden, you picked up a sword. Do you know how to use it so well? I'm like, this is weird. I would have loved to see, for example, him playing with swords and all that kind of stuff when he was like in his layers and all that kind of stuff. Be like, wait, okay, and then now he's like dangerous. Like, you know what I mean? Something to indicate.
I don't need it. For me, the movie never made it seem like he's not a formidable foe. It's just I always appreciate when people are like, I'm not going to get my hands dirty though.
Okay, well that's fair. I always appreciated that. Yeah, I always appreciated that. Like it's always like, fine, I'll do it myself moment. Like kind of how Thanos is always like, fine, I'll do it myself. He always sent people to collect the Infinity Stones, and he was like, fine, I'll do it myself. I get that. What I'm saying is that up until then, for me, that final scene was weird for me because nothing indicated that he was actually good at.
Yeah, but you also said he's like powered by the blood god at that point. So what does it matter what he was before?
Well, that's fair.
Yeah, that's why I asked if you were trying to give an argument for why he was good, because you're like, you offered that information. I was not going to even touch that, but then you. No, said,
I'm just. I was just basically trying to work through that final. I was just trying to work through that final like sword thing to be like, was this something?
He's got like the blood of like 12 other vampires, and then he becomes a god. Like I don't understand why it would matter who he was before.
That's fair. Okay, so yeah, that was something that I was like, wait. Am I? Okay, but I'm not. Okay, that works. But the one thing I forgot about that scene, though, was when the skeletons flew out of the body, I forgot they had wings. That was a really, really cool thing for me.
I didn't remember that either, even from this. I must have seen that because you say that, and now I've got the image in my head.
Yeah, because the skeletons flew out of the mouths and like had like visual wings that they were flying around with. I'm like, that's really, really cool. Because it was something that was arguably not necessary at that point. To need wings to justify the physics of a skeleton leaving the body. You would assume that mystical stuff would just be flying around, but it was still cool, I think, from a visual standpoint. Maybe that was the difference between a pure blood and like a not pure blood, and that I don't know.
I feel like you might be onto something there about the
Yep.
pure blood thing. I don't know how to say her name. N apostrophe Bushe, right? But like,
Oh yeah,
I
the
really
person
like
that plays Karen.
yeah, I really
Yeah.
like Karen as a character. Like, she's very like self-sufficient. Like, yes, he saves her at one point, but she's ultimately the person that like comes up with a way to save, to like actually make sure she doesn't turn, and it's her formula he uses to beat Deacon Frost and like most of the vampires in the last sequence. And I'm like, eh, yeah, like there's never any like damsel in distress moment really, because even in the moment where he's saving her from the cop in quotation marks, she's like, wait, you're just using me as bait? And he's like, now get over it. Like, it
Yeah.
isn't a genuine damsel in distress moment. That's just Blade being like, oh, I'm gonna just throw her out in the open and capture this guy.
Yeah,
And
because, like,
I thought that like
obviously,
it's the only time she doesn't have true agency, but also like there's worse ways to do that to someone, because
that's
it's
correct. So yeah, because I really, really do like her character because, yeah, she fights in her own way. She's like, yeah, I can't do what you do, but look, I made you a weapon. Like that's pretty
yeah. Or when
badass.
he's
I'm
like,
like,
do you know how to use one of these? And he's like, no, but I'll damn well sure learn like how to do it. And like when
yeah,
he
I
gives her
love
the
her
gun, I'm
character.
like, yeah, great.
It was so good.
Yeah, she's not like, yeah, she never hinders it. I'm like, yeah, there's never a moment where it's like, oh, like drop the gun or else I'll kill. It's like stuff just keeps happening, and like they keep figuring out a way to like get out of it.
And she really does. She's integral to that whole part too. The
Yes,
idea of like,
she's very important.
yeah, just like the final bite scene and all that kind of stuff was like,
That also is like, like
it had to happen. It had to happen.
but I would say I think that might also be, I don't know how intentional it is. That might also be like a commentary on black dynamics, like the idea that the black woman would need to be leached off of to save the day.
Oh, I never even thought of it like that.
I think
Wow.
that is even as a kid that stood out to me, that he would like, because there is no sexual, I mean, he has more sexual tension with his mom than he does with Karen. It's always,
Yeah, and I was going to talk to you about that because that was something
but
that
like
was really
the only
weird.
like almost sexual thing is when he's taking her blood, because that's kind
Yes.
of the deal with vampires, right? That's supposed to be like a sexual thing. But I also looked at it like the amount of pressure that's put on black women to like just deal with all the shit in their life and then still have like to mother the black man that like is either her boyfriend, her husband, her brother, or her actual son. That stood out to me. But I don't know what the director's intention is there, or even David Goyer's as the writer. It just seemed like that was a thing that I was like, that is something. They don't really deal with it, but that's something.
Yeah, especially, oh god, yeah, I never even thought about that angle. I'm gonna have to think about that a lot more because that is quite intense.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and it kind of just, I want like, it's so hard for me because I'm like, I can't imagine they wouldn't, even the actress wouldn't be able to think about it that way. But it could just very well just been written like, well, and then she like, that's her sacrifice. She gives Blade her blood.
Yeah, because in that moment in the movie, there's nothing else that makes sense to actually. Right. Yes. There's no other course of action. Like, yeah, you have to kind of do this, especially for her, where it's like, hey, I kind of figured out a cure already. So, like, if you do this, it's not actually going to hurt me or anything like that, but it's still going to hurt me. Like, it's not comfortable or anything like that. And it seems to me like,
and he's going to go overboard at one point.
Yeah, he draws more than other things. Now, I don't know if that was what they were trying to convey, or they just like, no, this is a pivotal scene, so we want more angles at this. Kind of like how like an underwater scene is like way longer than, oh, that was like the longest 30 seconds of my life. You're like, bitch, that was a 5-minute scene. Like, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they want to ratchet up the tension.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I don't know if it was that, or it's like purposely making a point of like, no, he's pulling even more out of her than most people would, kind of deal. I don't know.
It's very interesting. I don't know, but
especially because I looked at it from the perspective of, if he hadn't had blood in a long time, did he go overboard with that too?
Yes. So I think there was more of an in-story logic than what I'm talking about, but it is something that even as a kid stuck out to me is that like he's going overboard, and it's like it's like a black woman being leeched off of. She's already given all she has given him the cure, she has solved the issue, and there's still more demanded of her in the movie. Now she has to like give of herself. She's already given like her brain, her talent, and now it's like, well, now you just gotta straight up give your blood.
And I feel like I gotta rewatch that scene because it was one of those things where now that you're saying this, I want to rewatch the scene from the perspective of, is this something that they're directing her to be like, no, you're willingly doing this or begrudgingly doing this? You know what I mean? It's like, no, there's no other way. You have to do it, get it over with, kind of deal. Or is this something like, because she rips the thing off first and then starts like tearing off the neck and all that, but like, was it something that was more invited than not? And that's difficult because we're layering so many different things upon this actress's portrayal of that one particular scene. It's heavy for sure. Oh god, there's so many heavy parts of this because it's weird that it's almost like because of those particular scenes where the two white cops shoot him and he's like, motherfucker, are you crazy? And there's no other like follow-up to that would be realistic, or the person being assaulted in the middle of the street. It's almost like it's the fictionalized, non-colonialized version of a history where people they can actually interact with, which is so weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say those things are done because they weren't thinking about it.
Yeah.
Whereas there are like the first thing I noticed in the movie is when his mother is brought into the hospital, her ID drops and it makes sure it says Negro or whatever. I can't remember the term they use, but like, it's like, no, he is black, and it's like, but like, I think that's as far as they're willing to go. It's like he's black, so the bad guys use like not necessarily overt racist terms. They are racist terms, but they're not overt. Uncle Tom is way more on the nose than the Bright Eyes name, but like it's like, because I feel like some people might hear that and just be like, oh, I guess he's got lighter eyes than everyone else. And I'm like, no, that's not what it means. And the Uncle Tom thing is like, all right, they called it out, but it's not something I feel like Blade deals with.
No,
I don't. And there might be, and I'm not saying there most certainly are people that would just be like, well, I don't deal in that. I don't care. But it's still not enough for me to be like, oh, this is a movie that's actually concerned with a black character going through these situations. It's a character that happens to be black.
That's correct. And that's how I see it too. It's like, okay, yeah, it's either because they're like, here are situations that are realistic, but the movie doesn't directly deal with it at all from his perspective. It's just like, nope, it happens, and we're just moving along now. You know, it's kind of that. Does that say more than, because like it's like, yep, this is what we deal with every single day. We have to, kind of move on, get over it. This is what Blade had to deal with.
No, I don't think that's what they were doing.
Yeah, that definitely weren't doing that. But I mean, could we even look at it from that perspective? Like that, I don't think we can, because it wasn't the intent of the director, right? It was just like, yeah, we're just going to do this scene here.
I think it's more that. I think they were just like, here's what it says in the script. Here's what's happening.
To be clear, I'm not trying to find a way to like look at this.
I know you're
like,
not.
I'm just being like, here's another angle that popped in my head. I'm like, but no, this doesn't work. And this is what I typically do, is I think out loud.
Yeah, that's why we have a podcast.
That's right.
I think it's a fun movie. I remember being like, oh, some of the design is genuinely like creepy, like like burnt Donald Logue, like Quinn in the hospital is pretty freaky.
Burnt Donald Logue,
like
creepy.
Her lab assistant when she gets dropped down into that cave thing, and he repeats his lines like, "Do you ever have regrets about it?" I'm like, that's fucking creepy too. Like, they did some good work with that.
Yeah, because this movie to me is how I remembered Spawn.
Oh, like
in terms of its scariness, creepiness factor.
Okay,
yeah. In terms of when rewatching Spawn, I'm like, I thought I remember this being a lot scarier or creepier than it actually was. This movie was like on par with what I remembered it being. I'm like, there's specific vampire stuff in here, like dark scenes and all that. That genuinely made my skin crawl as a kid, and still kind of creeps me out to this day.
Very creepy.
Yeah.
This director, Stephen Norrington,
Mhm.
only done one other movie I've ever seen. He's only done 4 movies in his life. The other movie I've done, and I think I'm going to be talking about it with someone else, is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Mhm.
It's it is.
That's the one with Sean Connery, right?
Yeah, so it made
Yeah.
Sean Connery stop acting, and it made the director stop directing.
It was that bad, eh? Yeah, I never watched it.
Let me be honest with you. I did rewatch it.
Mhm.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand why people don't like it, but I think it's because it's an Alan Moore comic book.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure people had very specific ideas of how that should be represented. And I had the good fortune, I guess, to never even know that Alan Moore wrote it or that it existed. I was just like, what? A bunch of crazy not comic book, but literary characters in the same movie, like the Avengers? Great. I'm down. But yeah, that's for some other time. But that's a 50% success rate for me in terms of I really like Blade, and less so like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But I feel like one thing this director knew how to do is stage fights.
Yes.
I haven't seen the other 2 movies he's done. One's called The Last Minute, and the other one's called Death Machine. I can't say that the posters really make me want to watch them.
Yeah, I can't. I've seen this. I would probably say that this is the only movie I've seen with Stephen Norrington, because I haven't even seen The Extraordinary Gentleman.
I think you might find it fun. I don't, and especially since you haven't read any of the source material. It's just fun because it's like, oh, okay, Captain Nemo, someone related to Dracula, Tom Sawyer, Invisible Man, Dorian Gray, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde all have to come together and basically be the Avengers and
yeah, no, it's a fun concept. I just never got around to watching it for some reason. To me, I don't know why, but the Mystery Men was such a letdown for me that I'm
it's nothing like Mystery Men.
Yeah, I know that, but it was for some reason in my mind as a kid at that time, I was kind of no, I'm kind of over this right now. I'm just gonna focus on what I do and because I rewatched movies a lot as a kid instead of actually enjoying new movies, which says a lot about a lot of my memory if I can't remember some of these scenes that well. But yeah. It was a really fun movie. One of the things I thought was really, really interesting too is that there was an alternate ending.
Oh yeah, the Morbius thing. I think I showed you that one day.
What's that?
I feel like I showed you that one day. I sent you the link or something. The Morbius ending.
I can't.
Have you watched it?
No, I haven't. I can't remember it.
It's just it's what I like about it is it shows that he's still with Karen.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just look over their shoulders and see Morbius in his hair. He looks kind of like how they did Winter Soldier and the actual Winter Soldier movie, where it's goggles and the hair blowing and his face is kind of covered.
Gotcha.
I would assume because it's in the daylight, so he needs to cover up or whatever. But I honestly feel since they don't say his name, if you were just in a general audience, if you saw that, you'd be like, okay, I guess another vampire's there. You wouldn't. There's nothing that is specifically oh my goodness, Michael Morbius. It's just if you really they would have to put that in the newspaper or something back then.
Yeah.
It would have to be and there's a special ending if you're a Morbius fan. It's not. I feel like there's nothing to make it clear he's Morbius. So it's fine that it's cut.
You know what I think is actually also interesting that now that we're talking about Norrington is I'm seeing this on the Wikipedia thing is in 2008 it was announced that Norrington would be directing the reboot of the Crow franchise, and then he was replaced. He left the film in 2013. That's funny.
That's weird because he did say I just don't want to, because his problem, I actually can see that because it was said that Blade obviously isn't a big budget movie. I mean, there's effects obviously, but
yes.
I get the sense that
its budget was
They were
45
like,
million.
it's a black super. Like they didn't
Yeah.
look at it that way, but they're like, that's a Wesley Snipes movie.
Yep.
Like, whatever the money is, that's what we're spending. Whereas League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was like, oh, like, I mean, Sean Connery probably is a big price tag, but there's a lot of effects in that movie, and he was just like, I didn't like having like such a big crew. I didn't want that, and I didn't want the like studio execs on the set every day, like telling me what to do. And I'm sure that he probably thought like, oh, I can do The Crow because no one's going to be around. And then they probably started being like, oh no, we need this to work, so we're going to be on your ass. And he was like, all right, I can't do this again.
Yeah. The budget for League was 78 million, and then for the budget for Blade was 45. The box office did 131.2.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like damn good return on investment.
I always say that like by the time they get to Blade Trinity, it is. I get that he didn't deal with it maturely, but like I understand. I understand Wesley Snipes being like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, it's not like these movies are doing poorly, and you need to bring in new people to like save the franchise.
Yeah, I fully agree with him. I just didn't. Yeah, like he didn't act professionally. He was very, very childlike. But his point still stands. Like, yes, like you're right. Like he had a point.
And it does play into especially. I mean, this is coming out in like August, so who knows what things will be like then. But like right now, as we're recording, like the idea I posted on my Facebook as well, like. There's that idea of like as soon as like it's seen that like black people are like building something up and like being sufficient, because as I said, he's a producer on it as well. He's not just the talent in that respect. So he's making decisions. He's probably put money on the line as well. It's like they try to take it away from you. And as much as people like Patton Oswalt want to make jokes about like, oh, like I can't believe he was acting like that, made life real hell. It's like, well, just imagine being the only black person that thinks they can make decisions, and then a bunch of white people just come in and start taking away your movie.
It's true. Because it's a form of protest in his own right, the way he did it. He's like, yeah, contractually I have to, but I don't have to be nice about it. And that was his own form of protest, being like, this is bullshit. And I agree with that. I really do. It's just like, even if he had the power, he's like, the moment you allow me to do this, I'm building it, and now you want to take it away from me. It's bullshit. And like to have that racial recognition on screen as well as backstage is like that representation of like,
and it's
white people.
He's the one constant, as I said. There's not a lot of repeat customer. It's not like I mean, yes, David Goyer wrote. I'm assuming he wrote all of them, and then he was going to direct this one. But like, I can see him even feeling more threatened by that. Of like, so wait, you've been here the whole time. You know how this goes, and you're still choosing to do this. It's kind of like, anyway, that is how I feel, is that like I get that people like to get their jokes off, and like maybe Ryan Reynolds had his feelings hurt because Wesley Snipes wasn't nice to him, but like I don't know, man, like it's the Blade franchise. Wesley Snipes wasn't doing a bad job at it. Like even to the point where people are like, oh, they should bring him back then. Even if they're saying like he should pass the mantle off, people are like, but he should be Blade. I know Mahershala Ali is now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But like,
I'm excited for Mahershala Ali.
But it's like people up until Mahershala Ali got mentioned were like, yeah, but they should bring Wesley Snipes back. And it's like, that there's a reason for that.
Yes, because
he did a good job. He did something with that character, and he was also a producer. And again, that might have just been a title they gave him, but like it seems like even on the first movie they were letting him make decisions with like how people did their performances and stuff. So like he probably had some, even if it was an illusion, idea that he had power. And it seems like the third movie they were trying to take it away from him.
Yeah, it's true. It's like
that's fucked up.
The swan song, like, because the thing is, like, to get a trilogy is amazing, but you want to be able to go out on the trilogy, right? Like you can't really, like, the idea of what he was basically doing was like, look, I built this world, and now you have two characters bringing in. If this movie does well, basically you're just saying you don't want me to have another trilogy, so you're going to use these two characters to spin off and just continue this character's world, what I've built, with these two white people instead.
Mhm.
or with one of them or whatever. And ultimately, yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's bullshit. I would hate to be in that situation too. It's
Yeah.
not fair.
What they should have done was be like, oh, we're gonna do a movie with these two characters. Do you want to like cameo in it, or do you want to like join their movie?
Yeah, and that should have been after Blade Trinity.
And that's like how they pass off the mantle or whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
But whatever. That's the problem for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just figured
Hopefully.
we'd talk about it now because we're not talking about Blade Trinity.
No, we're not.
No.
And for this reason, we don't want to get into the point where we're just like really, really shitting all over the movie.
Yeah, I just wanted us to be doing like the ones that people actually like.
Yeah.
There's no need to like.
Which is also why we're not doing Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Because I do like Batman Forever, but I understand that people don't like it, so I'm not gonna like bother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's rate it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Are we missing anything? I feel like we're not missing anything.
I don't think we really are. I mean, like, aside from dissecting the actors' performances and all that kind of stuff, which is not really. I mean,
no. I mean, everyone
is
believable.
themselves. Yeah.
I guess we didn't talk about that Pearl character. That was an interesting character. The like big blob.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
They, like,
the information person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a fun scene.
That's a very, very fun scene. I was like, oh my god, I'm genuinely grossed out by this, and I keep forgetting. I'm like, wait, they have regeneration powers. Donald Logue's arm grew back, so I'm like, I'm not that worried about it. Like,
no, but like to a point, right? Like if they just keep shining the light on him, at a certain point he'll die.
Oh yes, of course. But like if they,
he'll be fine. He'll be able to regenerate after this, but still in the moment, he might be like, oh, they're actually gonna kill. I think he even says, they're gonna kill me. I need to give the information. Like,
it's because I got the sense from Karen, and I really don't want to butcher the pronunciation of her name, so I'm just gonna call her Ms. Wright.
Yeah, Miss Wright.
Karen's character. There was a seriousness of like, no, I would have killed him if he moved, or I would have killed Pearl if Pearl moved.
Right, because she did say like, what, he did move. Like,
yeah.
We didn't ever talk about Blade's mother. This is
yes.
time for us to talk. I guess,
oh my god.
So the point of the movie, I don't know anyone that's listening to this that doesn't already know it, but just so that everyone's on the same page, I know we're like an hour into this now, but Blade is a daywalker, which means his mom got bit, and so some of the vampire stuff came, or all the good stuff of being a vampire came to him, and none of the bad stuff.
Well, arguably no, because he doesn't see the bloodlust as a good thing, right?
Right. Sorry, all of the powers and none of the weaknesses other than the bloodlust. So yes.
So he doesn't have the garlic or silver or whatever, but he just the bloodlust he's left with. But
so
they were saying
goes around killing every vampire because he's like, got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And
Deacon gives him peace. He says, "It's like don't tell me to cope with this. This is the only way to cope with it. It gives me peace." I'm like, okay, Betty.
And then Deacon Frost is, as we talked about earlier, trying to like start this new wave and become the ultimate vampire, and in general, make it so that vampires are top of the food chain overtly instead of living in the shadows. Yes. And then Blade has to stop that, but Deacon Frost also has uncovered this ancient thing, and he becomes a super
prophecy.
Yeah, super, and it seems like Blade's mom, was in on this the whole time, so I guess she didn't die.
So this is the thing. I think it's super weird because she got bit, she died during childbirth, and what most likely happened was the doctors were like, oh yeah, she's dead, like do whatever, and then she turned after in the coffin or whatever, and then just escaped. That must be the thing, because she got infected while she was pregnant, and that's how Blade came to be.
I don't think this is the case in the movie, but if you look up the character, I think Deacon, and obviously not his like biological father, but it is listed that Deacon Frost is his like vampiric father. So I'm assuming that means Deacon Frost is the one that bit his mom. But I don't think that's what they're doing in the movie. I think that's just like a comic book canon type thing.
Right. I think that's right. Because in the comic book he's like way older.
Yes, he's way.
He's portrayed as like this old white guy with like white hair. Yeah, and even here on the Wikipedia it says wearing 1860s Germany period clothing.
Right.
So they're
and I'm fine with how they aged him up. It would be too much if like they tried to portray the like True Blood vampires the way they did, and then Deacon Frost was the way he's described on this Wikipedia page. I think you need it to be like he's this young hip looking guy.
Yes.
To make it just without too much dialogue, making it clear like he's the new blood that's trying to like create something new.
Yeah, it's another thing that I think was very, very comparable is like the idea of new money and old money.
Right.
Like there's in a country club, it's like, oh, he's new money. It's like still a form of looking down of where your money came from, or just like the fact that it's like you might have all this money, but you're not behaving like us, kind of deal.
Yes.
And that's where this that kind of pure blood kind of thing came from. It's like if you think about it that way,
that's the perfect way to look
money.
at it. He's new money, they're old money. And then. Well, yeah, I mean, it always kind of like my eyes kind of gloss over when she comes back because I'm like, what? But for me, the way I just reconcile is like this is just supposed to be like the last blow to Blade, like be like, all right, well, we got your mom, and I like this. The movie isn't really leaning on he's doing this to avenge his mom's death.
No, he's not.
So like, I guess the idea that his mom has been alive this whole time would still shake him.
Correct.
And that's kind of just where I leave it. I'm like, I don't really know like what they gain from this.
Yeah, because it's
really
not
like she's like helping in any way other than for this reveal. And I'm not saying it's not in the movie. It's just I've never like picked up on what her deal is.
Yeah, her deal is more along the lines of like, hey, I'm dead, I'm alive now, and I'm weirdly sexual towards my own son. But also the idea of like, do you get the sense of there's still a motherly instinct to be like, I still want to provide the best world possible for my son, so come join us because this way we'll be on top.
No, I just kind of got the sense that she was fucking with him the whole time.
Yeah.
I kind of got the sense that she was like, haha, also join us because that's what Deacon Frost wants. He doesn't want to actually have to fight you, but
I guess
you're not going to
thing, right?
Then
because like he didn't actually have a relationship with her, obviously. Before he was orphaned.
Yeah, it's not like he grew up and then she got bit. It's like he never knew her.
Yeah. So
I guess
must have been.
I guess he must have had pictures of her then, because like why would you even be like, oh, that's my mom?
Well, he only had the ID.
The ID, okay.
Yeah, he had the ID. That's how he knew the entire time. But there was other than like a pretend or projected a relationship, it would just caught her off guard. Like, But that scene was really, really, really cool because it was one of those things that I kind of forgot. And then when I was like, oh wait, but then I was like, wait, this is way more sexual than I remember it being.
I always remember being like, wait. So the only like attempt at, and I don't think they were actually attempting. I get what they were trying to do. It's just supposed to be off-putting overall. But I was like, it's still the most like sexual chemistry in this movie is between for Blade is between him and his mom.
Yeah, because Blade, obviously, you get the sense of like he's got no interest in sex or whatever. He just wants to kill vampires. That's it. Because he feels hatred towards the fact that he had to kill homeless people.
Get the sense he kind of likes Karen because. Whistler even says like, well, you could have just let her die. He's like, yeah, and then I didn't, so let's fix this. So I get the sense he's kind of like, I like her.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure we touched on the mom because it's not for me a lasting memory other than who's playing her, which is Sanaa Lathan. But like other than that, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I guess that's just the thing that happens. It's like, oh, your mom's still alive. Does he kill her or no?
He does.
He does. He does kill her. Okay.
He kills her with like a bone or something like that.
Yeah. See, I just kind of tune her out after a while because I'm just like, oh yeah, this isn't really going to be a thing for me. It's just kind of like, yeah, that momentarily threw him off his game.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely really now the rating.
Yeah.
All right. This is definitely a 7.5 for me.
Yeah, I'm 7.5 as well.
Yeah, because I just wish they leaned into the things that they just graze over.
I wish they did,
yeah.
but I think also structurally there's some stuff where I'm just like the mom. I think it's just the mom thing that I'm kind of like.
Yeah.
It's, something could have been done even with that felt a bit more earned.
Yeah.
Like
I would
even if
agree with
there was like a build up to like the reveal of what's in that coffin or something like that, and then you're like, oh fuck, it's his mom, but it kind of just comes out of nowhere for me, maybe. And I've watched it
No,
a couple times now.
it really does. It comes out of nowhere for me, and I think like I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense of why it would just come out of nowhere. It would make perfect sense to reveal that to the audience the same time that we would get the character, right? It made sense, but it still does come out of nowhere, and it's one of those beats where it's like, oh, okay, wait.
I think you're covering your mic.
Sorry, yeah, it works on one of those beats where it does come out of nowhere, and that's why it doesn't really work sometimes.
But. Yeah, and I think it would have been raised if they did a little bit more with the fact that he's black and doing these things and living in this world.
Correct.
Also, for some, like in the trivia, it says that he's holding a map of New Orleans, and I just assumed they were in New York, but apparently they are in New Orleans.
I always assumed they were in New York for some reason.
I guess because I think it's Marvel and everyone's in New York in Marvel, but like, but as the trivia says in the comics, he usually is in New Orleans because New Orleans has such a strong tie to vampires.
Yeah, like that would make sense to me, but I'm like, that was definitely not the setting here for sure. But like,
I wonder where they filmed, because like I just feel like it looks like New York, but
yes,
apparently it's supposed to be New Orleans.
Because I'm looking for an accent, right, or something.
It doesn't matter. They filmed in British Columbia and LA, so it doesn't matter. So it's not even like they filmed in New York, so it could be anywhere, literally.
Right. It's just generic urban settings.
Yeah, like there are places that kind of look like that in New Orleans, but they didn't even go like by water or anything. Like I feel like that's a nice indication of like a bayou or something.
Yeah, like it just bothered me that there was just there would be no accent, right? So like that must have been one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this is an Easter egg of like referencing where it's from, but we're not doing that here. That's what I'm hoping, anyways.
Maybe they were just like, it doesn't matter where they are.
Yeah, just because the thing is, you know what's interesting is like now, looking for Easter eggs now is like, okay, a really, really common thing versus back then is like, you generally would question that. It's like, was this something that they did? Like, was this stupid? Did they think they were in New Orleans?
I think there was always an audience for Easter eggs. I think it's just more widespread now.
That's right.
I think and I'm not saying this is where it started, but I think specifically like Star Wars brought out like Easter because of the additional like literature or like even the like toys that you could buy. Like there's there's callbacks to that. Like I think I don't know if this is true, and I'm not even going to say it because I don't know if I'll say it off. But it's something like there is a species that's not named in the movie, but for some reason everyone knew what their name was because of the merchandising and everything. And it was kind of like, I feel like, like they just put in Easter eggs there that people can be like, oh, okay, I get that refers to this book or this thing. Right. And that was before the internet was a big thing where people
and that makes complete sense to me. I mean, Star Wars was primarily a vehicle to sell toys anyways.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if we're being completely honest about it,
I think it became that. I think the first movie was just a desire for George Lucas to get his like Flash Gordon stuff off, and he couldn't make Flash Gordon or something like that. And then when it did well, because I think that's why he had all the rights, because everyone's like, whatever, do your stupid movie. And then once he realized what kind of a moneymaker it was, that's when they really went to town.
Actually, you're most likely right about that, which is why it explains why they weren't ready for the Christmas toy thing. Because it was famous, like when Star Wars came out, they're like the demand was so high they like literally sold cardboard boxes of like, here's where your action figures would be once we actually make them. That's a very interesting The Toys That Made Us episode on Netflix.
I haven't watched the toys one. I've watched the movie one.
I haven't seen the movie one, surprisingly.
The Home Alone one is amazing.
Yeah.
Like they had no money, so like they had to just bring it like all the like All right, we'll talk about this off thing. But
Yeah.
the Home Alone one is great. It is very interesting.
I heard the Dirty Dancing one's really, really good too.
I'm sure all of it's good. I just
Yeah.
when I saw the options, I was like, I only care about Home Alone out of these options. So
Right. Because wasn't there Ghostbusters on there too?
yeah, there was, but
you don't like it because it had bad early how to get screwed over, right?
No, I just don't care about those movies. I like
You don't.
they're
Oh,
fine.
okay.
They're
Right.
like I don't think they're special to me. That doesn't mean they're not special.
That's fair.
Most of my friends loved them. I have family members that love them, and to me, it's just like okay.
Yeah, Ghostbusters didn't mean as much to me as Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and for me, like it's not like they're the same thing, but like I cared more about Ninja Turtle stuff. Like as like I remember being like actively like, no, I don't want to play Ghostbusters. Let's play Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, because that's how it was. Like for me as a kid, it was just, no, like you like Ghostbusters? That's lame. Like dinosaurs are so much cooler kind of deals.
But yeah, that's our episode on Blade.
Yep.
And a little bit about other stuff. I think a 7.5 movie. I'm assuming I'm gonna like the second one better, but we'll find out. We're not even doing that next. It doesn't matter what we're doing next. You'll find out when it comes out. Yeah, we're not doing these movies. We're doing these movies in the years they came out, not just like, because Blade 2 comes next, we're doing Blade 2 next. We're doing the movies in between as well. All right. Now that I've explained that, I need to explain this. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, has been mentioned earlier. That means you should go to thatshelf.com, where you will find other podcasts like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, what a great theme song, and other stuff. It's great. You'll love it. And if you love us, please go to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. We're on a bunch of podcatchers, and we'd love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can email us at spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at TDFSpoiled. So get in touch with us and talk to us.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're thinking.
Let us know what you want us to take a look on, what you want us to take our lens and take a look at, or if you just think that we're off base on a couple of thoughts.
Yeah. Don't
open
be
up
shy.
some dialogue. Let's talk.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Goodbye, I think.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.